Hi, this is John with Fix-It Planet. Today we're going to take a look at this Apple Watch Series 3. This is the A1861. Today we're going to do basically three different things. We're going to remove and replace the display without damaging it, since it isn't damaged. We're going to remove and replace the battery. And we're going to remove and replace the Force Touch sensor. So we are covering quite a bit of ground here. As you can see, this one is not turning on when we put it on the charger. It's barely drawing 18 milliamps. And that is not enough. We need at least half an amp. It's fluctuating a little bit, but as you can see, it is not taking any kind of a charge as well. So I've got the little tiny tip of that X-Acto knife just barely under the screen. We don't want to put it in very far. We have heated the screen up, and that helps to soften up the adhesive underneath, but it is really important that we do not put this pick in very far. We've got cables all along this side here. 3 of them to be exact that we need to watch for. There's even a couple nearby where we already are that are for the Force Touch sensor. And the hardest part is just getting in there and getting a gap started. If the screen's not already damaged, you don't want to do any damage to it if you can help that. Otherwise, you might have to replace it. You can see those 3 cables right here aren't very far from the edge, but the Force Touch sensor is right along the edge there, and we have pushed it in a little bit, and it has kind of separated from around the frame. We'll want to inspect it and make sure that we haven't damaged it. I'm just checking the battery to see if it's swollen. It doesn't appear to be swollen. You can see here where the Force Touch sensors kind of come loose from around the edge of the frame there, and I'm just checking these cables to make sure they weren't damaged. We probably should have come in on the other side, the opposite side of that corner, and might have been a little bit safer, but we're fine. So I just had the wristband on to give me something to hold on to. Now these 3 cables are stuck down with this black tape. So we're going to use tweezers or the spudger to kind of lift this tape up over the connectors, and then also from behind the cables, because they'll stick to the back of the display and won't want to move. So we have to be really super careful that we don't tear any of these cables or damage these connectors. They're actually very fragile, so you don't want to dig at them with any of your tools. Now this spudger is going to be too small, or too thick actually, to fit in there, because we've got a couple of, we have 3, let's see if we can get a little closer here. We have 3 clamps that hold those down. So we're just going to use this thin metal spudger, and we're going to just release those clamps, and that'll free those cables up and allow us to pull them out. The only problem is we've also got tape on there that is sticking to the back of the display, which is also preventing them from just moving freely. So where there's a will, there's a way. We just get those loose, Take a quick look. If you damage those cables in any way, you're pretty much done. There is no way to replace those cables. So I suspect that this battery is just not taking a charge. We're going to use a Y000 to get this screw out right here. All of these batteries kind of seem to not hold up for very long. You would think a couple of years they might be okay. You may find that you have to replace this battery at least once in the lifetime that you have it. So under this metal bracket that we've just raised up, you'll find the connector for the Force Touch sensor on top of the battery connector. So we have to move that out of our way to get to the battery. It's very compact in here. They're jamming a lot of stuff in this little tiny compartment. So we'll just get the metal bracket out of our way, and we're going to remove it from this black adhesive or tape that's sitting on the Taptic engine. There's also a couple little metal contacts there you need to watch out for. We don't bend or break those, and I'll point them out again later. First, we're going to disconnect this Force Touch sensor. And then we'll be able to get it out of our way. It runs all the way around. We're going to pop loose that battery connector. And then we're going to reach back behind there with our nylon spudger, and we're just going to pry it up from the adhesive that's holding it down. And we can just leave that adhesive down there. The new battery will come with adhesive, but that's okay. We're going to leave that where it is. So I think maybe this one was potentially starting to swell a little, although it didn't show any real signs of major swelling or anything. So we're going to pop our new battery in and connect it up and test it before we do anything else. So I'm trying to keep my hands and fingers out of the way as much as possible, so we are using the spudger a good deal to connect these, make these connectors go where we want, and it doesn't always cooperate. Now we just want to reconnect the screen long enough to see if this is indeed our problem, and if it has solved our problem we can move forward. If it hasn't, then we are going to have to do some additional troubleshooting and see what our problem is. We reached back behind there with our spudger and attempted to raise that tape above the back of the display, but again it has stuck down on this other end here, and even though we've got the two on the right end pretty good, looks like, the one on the left is crooked, and we can't have them be crooked. So we need to reach back behind there with our spudger again is what we need to do. And lift that tape up. And I think that's going to free it up, and now we get it straightened out and into its little socket. Very good. Now before we do anything else, we're just going to lay this down and set it on the charger. And there we go. We've got display, which is a very good sign, and we're pulling about a 1/2 amp. And now you can see that the battery is now taking a charge as the numbers on the bottom begin to go up. It is responding to our touch, which is also a good sign that we haven't done any damage to the screen or those cables. So now we have to take the screen off again so we can go on about doing the rest of what we need to do in order to get this thing closed back up so that it can be worn and be safely worn, that it's not going to fall apart on him. Basically, we're going to have to clean all the surfaces up around the edges. We're going to have to clean the Force Touch sensor. We're also going to have to clean the screen or the display assembly from any old adhesive residue or any bulk of that adhesive that may have remained behind. We've got to get all that out of there. Since we're happy that the battery is working, we're going to go ahead and stick it down. We'll remove the masking off of this adhesive that came with it, and we'll just shove it on down in there and make sure that it's seated all the way in and isn't going to come out. We're actually going to remove our Force Touch sensor. So we just want to be careful that we don't rip the layers of the Force Touch sensor, since it does have layers, like a sandwich. We're also going to make sure that we don't break it in half, that we don't tear the two cables that are attached to the connector. All of those little goodies are necessary for this to work properly. And we've got lots of little bits of adhesive and dirt and debris and other things that are down around there. We need to get all that out before we can put fresh adhesive down. It needs to be very clean. Why does it need to be very clean? Well, because if it isn't clean, as you can see, all that crud down there on the mat, yeah, we don't want that kind of stuff. If it isn't clean, the new adhesive is not going to bond well around the edges, and it will eventually come up, if not, maybe not stick at all. So as boring as this is, we're going to pull away all of the old adhesive. As you can see, there's one of the little strips. It's very thin. Got a little bit more of that here. Since that little area is very small, we are going to use the tip of our spudger and a small cleaning cloth, and we're going to go around the edges with some alcohol and just clean it as best we possibly can. I'll go over it one more time with my fingernail and the cleaning cloth. This is going to allow a little bit more of the cloth to make contact and potentially clean up anything that we've missed. While we're doing this, there is a couple of contacts that are sticking kind of up, and we want to make sure that our cloth does not run across those and pull them or bend them or break them off. You can just see them in the bottom right corner there. And those are fairly fragile as well, and could potentially be damaged if you are unaware that they exist. You may decide to shove your tool in there and break them off, or you may do something else. They're right here. And as you can see, they're very close to the edge of the screen, and they are necessary. We need those to be there. Now that we've got that side, we're going to do the other side as well. Now this side will be facing down. So this is the bottom side. You can see some of that adhesive goo is still left behind. We want all that off of there. So if you need to replace this Force Touch sensor, you can purchase them with the pre-cut adhesive. Now that's nice and clean. We can go ahead and move on to the next step, which is basically going to be applying the new adhesive that holds the Force Touch sensor. What we'll be using here is 2mm wide, which is a little wider than you really need. So we need to be careful that it is not overlapping, that it's not sticking out someplace where we need things to touch. Anything wider than this is going to be much too wide. This is about as wide as you're going to get away with. we've only got so much distance of elevation that we can allow for each layer for the display to actually fit properly in the end once we're finished with everything. So one of the things right here, it is overlapping a little in each corner. We need it to do that so that we can cut it absolutely right up against the edge of the other adhesive, so that once we apply pressure and it pushes downward, they push together and seal the gap. Now that that's in place, we're going to go around and make sure that it's also laying flush against the frame or the housing, that it's not bent or bowed or sticking up or anything like that, that it's all laying nice and flat up against the new adhesive. That's going to keep it in place. Very good. Now we can reconnect the Force Touch sensor and put our metal bracket back down. That just kind of hooks in and then lays down. So I'm going to actually hold it a little bit while I tighten down the screw. We're just going to snug it down. We're not going to over tighten it. Now this black sort of plastic with the adhesive on it is going to need to be stuck back down again, and the adhesive is kind of not working very well, but it's not critical that this is, you know, 100% perfect. So we're just going to shove some adhesive, some fresh stuff down in there and stick it down on top of that. We just want it to stay down. Now, just like we did with the Force Touch sensor, we're going to go around the edges of the display here and remove any sort of leftover adhesive residue. It's pretty clean. There is a little bit, maybe a tiny bit left that we need to just touch up. So you do want to be careful that you don't scrape up the glass or that you scratch it, cut through some of the paint or something. So you just want to make sure that you're not using metal tools or anything like that, that you're not over scraping too hard. We are using 100% alcohol. Sometimes it may be only 99%, whatever you can get your hands on, but this is 100% alcohol. No other additives. Now we have to apply the new adhesive for the actual display assembly. So we're basically going to repeat the process that we just did for the Force Touch sensor. Looks like my blade's getting a little dull, but we're almost finished. So we're going to go ahead and reconnect the display again. and double check and make sure everything is still functioning as expected. So we'll get our protective tape off of the screen now. So we are almost done. Okay, everything seems to be functioning as expected. So what we'll do now is go ahead and take the masking off of the adhesive strips that we added, so we can go ahead and set the screen down. So what we're going to do now is make sure that the force touch sensor is indeed responding, that everything is responding to touch. That it will charge. Force touch sensor is responding. And everything looks good. Hopefully you found this useful and interesting. If you liked it, like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.